Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. We have the usual crew for you here, and a big week coming off of USC 2024 spring practice. So very quick introductions and we'll get going. Eric McKinney, who is the editor-in-chief of WeAreSC, our recruiting guru, our leader, the boss, except when it comes to this particular show where I am. Mark Hulkin. Mark Hulkin is a podcaster and a writer, and he is the practice guru. I think that's what we settled upon last week. But you all know both of those guys. And if you've seen the show before this week, you know me too. I'm your substitute host, Chris Arledge. Guys, let's just jump right into it. Spring practice is over. The spring game is finished. So we have a lot to talk about. Let's start with this. Let's talk about the offense first. Tell me, what did you see that you liked? Mark, start us off.
I like the way the running backs ran and caught the ball. Physical. I was going into the game. What I was looking for was just a couple of things. We heard throughout the spring how Sean Nua and Coach Josh Henson, they were talking about the physicality that they were, with the offensive line, defensive line, putting their hands on each other, playing through their heart. So I wanted to see that aspect of the spring game. Going in, you kind of knew that the offensive play calling was going to be vanilla to begin with. So with the running game, you can focus on, are they physical, or are they reading the right hole, is the offensive line working in concert with each other? And I liked what I saw from those two units, from the running backs, from the offensive line, with the physicality. Marion Peterson, he had that really nice run. It was the loudest of the day. And Woody Marks is going to fit in really nicely with this offense. He showed off his, pass catching abilities. But Brian Jackson, look, he looks like an NFL back right now, and he's the youngest of the group. So what I saw from the running back room, liked it a lot. I saw enough from the offensive line room to say, all right, these guys can be okay. They're still working. They're still getting better. They're still getting used to each other. You saw the backups behind them. You need some veteran experience out of the transfer portal. I'm sure we'll talk about that throughout the show. But that's what I liked on the offense. There was some stuff we'll talk about what we didn't like. But if I had to pick two position groups, I would say the running backs and the offensive line room impressed me the most. The quarterbacks, statistically, they were good. They threw 4 interceptions combined between them. But again, stats, you kind of throw them out the door when it comes to the spring game. I liked what I saw from the running backs and the offensive line. And especially, coming from a vanilla type of game plan, there's not a whole lot you can really take from it.
McKinney, what did you take from it? What'd you like?
If we're just talking about one thing that I liked, it was the offensive line. And I say that with the absolutely massive boulder of salt that quarterbacks cannot be touched, and every pass rush to the quarterback has to be pulled back before you get there. Yeah. So, but that being said, I didn't see any, and we saw this last year. Certainly, if you think about the UCLA game, the number of plays where UCLA defensive linemen it wasn't even like they were untouched going into the backfield. It was like they were helped and pushed into the backfield at Caleb Williams. There didn't seem to be any just like, oh, yikes, that was an absolute disaster of a snap out on the edge. And this is, I think we have a lot of faith or maybe hopeful faith in Elijah Page at left tackle after what he did against Louisville, a solid game there, and certainly what you hear from players and coaches about him and what he's done this spring. He looks like he's going to be a guy out there at left tackle. Mason Murphy on the right side, nothing but questions. And that's based on what he's done at USC and how players and coaches have talked about, we need more consistency there. We need more consistency. Lincoln Riley said a number of times this spring, yeah, we're going to go get offensive linemen in the portal. But I thought he was solid, certainly solid enough in that game to think, okay, this is not a 5-alarm fire where you have got to get a starting right tackle or your season is done. So again, I say that understanding USC did not throw every single pass rush concept or kind of everything at their offensive linemen in that game. But I think in terms of kind of what you can look at and one-on-one stuff and that sort of thing, I think the offensive line showed enough to think, okay, that's starting five, certainly, and then you do have a lot of faith in Gino Quinones when he gets back. So I think you have enough up there to be pretty good. The conversation becomes, and we'll talk about this all off season. Do you want to be pretty good? Do you want to be good? Do you want to be elite to where you're playing the best of the best at the end of the season? Those are different, but I do think you can leave spring thinking, okay, if that's your five, you can win a few games with that group.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I thought that in the matchup between the offensive line and the defensive line, the offensive line controlled the day. And, I think it's probably going to be a pretty good group up the middle. Monheim is very smart and very skilled. And I would expect Pragnon and Alani Noah to be dramatically better this year than last year. But those are big guys who can move pretty well. So I expected that inside they would play pretty well. I didn't know what to see on the edges. The truth is, what we saw on the edges is those guys look just fine against USC's pass rushers. Now, we'll talk about what that means in a minute, but they looked like they more than held their own. And the offense had over 500 yards on 73 plays. I think that's not a spectacular performance for a Lincoln Riley offense, but considering you're not game planning and the offense tends to be behind the defense early, that's some indication that those guys can be all right. So I agree with that. I felt pretty good actually about the depth at wide receiver, because there aren't a lot of bodies there. But Jaden Richardson came in and played pretty well. In fact, made one really spectacular catch coming back to the ball and pulling it off the just off the turf. And I know it was a walk-on, but Josiah Zamora, if you had to have him give you 10 plays a game, he'd come in there and make some plays. I mean, it's not like the other team could just ignore him and dare him to catch the ball. He can play a little bit. So, you knew that the four freshmen would be good, and they are. You knew that Kyron Hudson could make plays. We've seen it from him before. But if the number 6 receiver on your team is Jaden Richardson, that's not bad. That's not bad. So I felt pretty good about that. And I agree with both you guys. The running backs, I don't know that there are any superstars there, right? That there's not a Reggie Bush in that room. But I think you have 4 guys that can play, and I think you have 4 guys that are pretty physical and can catch the ball. I feel pretty good about that group too. So all that seems right. Now, what did we not like offensively? Eric, start us off here.
I think that there's not a lot to say. I mean, the interception. That's what jumps out. Like, you look back at USC's 2022 and 2023 seasons and the just discrepancy in wins and losses. And I understand the schedule is hugely different between 2022 and 2023. The plus minus turnover ratio is probably the one thing that jumps out. I think it was like -1 this last year and like plus 22 or 21 the year before. And that number is wild. So again, that's it. You can't turn the ball over that many times. And those are throws where the defense is making a couple plays, but there's some throws in there that you have to have back. Again, it's hard, right? Are running backs breaking tackles? Are they being let up on? How hard are you going in the secondary if you're not getting like lit up and the receivers there? I don't know how much of a true push there was in terms of running the ball on the offensive line. So there's a lot of things where you'd love to see a more dominant offensive line and more kind of push in the run game, but it's tough to say that it wasn't there when you're not going full speed the whole time. But I think it's, you lacked a little bit of that magic, that big play magic from the offense in this game. It was, I think, that one throw kind of down the middle of the field to Josiah Zamora was kind of your big play. There were a couple runs that go for 10 plus, but nothing that kind of got out and leaked out and was just explosive. I think Deuce had a chance to put together a nice touchdown catch where he goes up and gets that and drops that one. And that's one of those where, if you want to be the guy at USC, that's a catch that you make for a touchdown. So I don't think there were any red flags offensively, but it didn't feel like the Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, here we go. This every single snap has a chance to go 75. And I think that we'll get into defensive talk here in a bit, but I think maybe that's a potential red flag when you did have an offense where it was just every play felt like you had, a couple big time options.
Yeah. What do you think, Mark? What do you see on offense that you didn't love?
Well, again, spring game, you knew the play calling was going to be vanilla, but I don't want to say the wide receivers were lackadaisical. It just felt that way at times, like maybe they weren't fighting as hard for the ball. Look, that play that Carlos Nicholson made on that pass breakup early in the game, Jacoby Lane was wide open. If Miller puts a little bit more on that ball, maybe Jacoby comes back and fights a little bit for it. If the ball is thrown perfectly, it's a touchdown. So there's an explosive play that was lost. Again, it's hard to say what I didn't like. Eric brought it up. It's the turnovers. But again, I hate to say it, when you're not playing full tackle to the ground, I think in your head, you're not going 100% to begin with. And I think that kind of showed itself on the field a little bit. But other than that, you went in there thinking, all right, we're getting 30 minutes of a spring game, tackle football. We ended up getting an hour and a half of thud. And I just don't know what the offense is going to show you that you're going to say, all right, well, I didn't like that. The quarterbacks, again, statistically, they made throws. You want a few of them back. The running backs showed their wares. It's hard to say, they need to fix this right now, or else whatever happens in September going forward isn't going to work.
Yeah.
I didn't like the turnovers. I didn't like the thud approach to it. I think it takes away from maybe being a little bit more aggressive on offense.
Yeah, the turnovers, particularly, I think there were two balls that we saw from Miller Moss. One that the pick, and then the one that Eric mentioned that was just underthrown. That's two throws out of 21 that are major mistakes. The pick in the end zone is a little bit different, right? You're thrown into a tight window. It may be that Kyron Hudson should have caught that ball away from his body and then it doesn't get tipped. I don't know. But that sort of thing happens, and I'm not going to blame it on Moss. But look, Moss threw 21 times for 133 yards, barely over 6 yards per attempt, 2 picks, and a huge missed opportunity on a deep ball that he underthrew. That's not a great performance from him. And we didn't see a ton from the tight ends. Joey Olsen had 3 catches for 25, which means that, somewhere around 6 to 7% of their receiving yards were the tight end, which is about par for the course over the last decade at USC. So I don't love that. But let's talk about the quarterbacks a little bit. Miller Moss was not terrible, but he wasn't great. What do we think what's the gap between 1 and 2? I know what Lincoln Riley said. I know he said there's a big gap. And I think there is, in terms of both experience and in terms of leadership, right? Miller's known these guys for a long time. They like him and they believe in him. And that's a big deal at quarterback, right? But how big is this gap really between him and Jay DeMavo? What do you guys think?
So after the game, walking back to the car, and I heard it from 2 different people. It was the whispers of, Jaden might be the guy. And I'm wondering if people are looking at, the ceiling. Miller has limited athletic ability, if you want to call it that. What he makes up, what he lacks in athleticism, he makes up for with, high football IQ. Jaden, he showed off how to use his legs in the game, whether they were designed, whether he took off because, he just felt it was the right time to do it. Doesn't matter. USC hasn't had too many 6'4" athletic type of bodies playing quarterback, and I think that excites people. So we know what Miller's capable of doing. We saw him do it in the Holiday Bowl. I think people are really intrigued by what Jaden could possibly bring in the future. So that's where I think we are with the quarterbacks. What Miller has leadership wise, Jaden's got a long ways to go catching up with that. But when it comes to, physical ability on the field, I think that's where people are like, what if?
What do you think, Eric? What's the real gap between 1 and 2 here?
I think it's pretty big. I think it's pretty big right now in terms of, you mentioned, right? Lincoln Riley wants people on the field touching the ball on every play that he has absolute full confidence in that they're going to make the right decision and they're going to run kind of what he runs. I think, we talked about it a ton last year with Caleb and maybe some freelancing and doing some of that. And I thought it was interesting that Riley said after the game, that quarterback position is going to be played differently this season than last, and talked about kind of in structure and rhythm and all of that, talking about how the wide receivers can fit in and how to play that position. So I think there's confidence there. I think Mark's right in terms of the leadership. And I think that that's part of, and I don't mean this as a knock on Caleb Williams when Lincoln Riley talks about the vibe of this team. I don't think that has anything to do with the change between Caleb Williams to another quarterback. But I think Miller Moss has been sort of the starter now for enough time, and for this roster, and I know they can still add players and all of that through the portal, but I think some of that has to do with this leadership group and the way things have gone this spring, that there's a good feeling. If you change quarterbacks, that changes that. And I'm not saying you can't do it, but I'm saying that's a big hill to climb to be comfortable enough to make what would be a change. I know he hasn't named a starter or anything, but Miller's the starter. To make a change there, you would need to, I think, have Jaden pass him by quite a bit in terms of shaking up that thing. So that's where I can see the gap being pretty big. What Mark said is true, and that's what we kind of talked about. I certainly talked about for a while, where if you just list the intangibles and you put the athletic ceiling of both guys, Mayav is the guy that you would look at and go, hey, what do we have here? I think with Miller, you know what you have, and that's what gives him a big thing. Because I don't think we should sell Miller's athleticism completely short. He can run a little bit and he can do some things in the pocket. He's not absolutely, helpless in terms of that. But I do think that there's a pretty sizable gap, and I think it would take a lot for Jaden to get there by this fall.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think a big part of it is the leadership aspect of it. It's hard to have the new guy pass up the guy who's been around, been leading the offseason workouts, who's been the heir apparent. We saw that with Max Brown and Sam Darnold, right? I mean, and that was with Clay Helton actually telling people that Sam Darnold is a possible future Heisman Trophy winner. He still had him on the bench at the beginning of the year. And that was a situation where the gap between 1 and 2 in terms of talent was enormous. The gap between Sam Darnold and Max Brown in terms of talent was giant. That's not the case with Miller Moss and Jaden Mayava. I do think Mayava may be the more talented guy, but it's not that level. At the same time, look, Lincoln Riley is a guy who has shown that he's willing to pull the trigger and bench a quarterback. Right, Spencer Rattler went into that Texas game a few years ago as a Heisman Trophy candidate. He came out of it as a guy who would never play at Oklahoma again. It takes it takes some guts to make a decision like that. Now, it helps that they were getting smacked, but even so, that takes some guts. Lincoln Riley has shown he's willing to do that. I suspect if you look at Lincoln Riley's starting quarterbacks from the time he took the job at Oklahoma till now, you would probably say Miller Moss is likely the least talented of that group. And if that's the case, then I wonder what Lincoln Riley thinks about it. I think this is Miller Moss's team right now. He's going to start the season as the number one. I think he'll play well. And if he does, he's got nothing to worry about. But I think he better play well, because I don't think the gap between him and number two is anything like the gap between 1 and 2 of the last 2 years, right? Caleb Williams was so much more talented than his backups. It was hard to imagine Caleb Williams doing anything and getting benched. Caleb Williams dramatically more talented than I think everybody in college football the last 2 years. But I wonder how long that leash is going to be if Moss doesn't put on the types of performances that people are used to seeing from Lincoln Riley quarterbacks very early in the season. Mark, you're going to say something.
No, I was just going to speculate on, how Lincoln Riley's looking at the season realistically in his head, as far as wins versus losses, how far this team can go, and when he would be willing to explore, making that change if he doesn't feel the team is, going to be in it in the end, so to speak.
Yeah.
It sets up, right, where if you come out and play poorly against LSU, you can get right and play a bunch of guys in your next game, and then a bye before Michigan, and you try to set it up for that one. If you're gonna look, we're jumping so many hurdles with ifs and all of that stuff, but it does set up where you can go early in the year if that's the way that you want to go with it.
Look, USC is in a position where with LSU first on the schedule, Michigan third, both those teams are beatable, by the way. LSU lost a Heisman winner, didn't play defense last year. Michigan lost everybody, including their head coach. But those are also teams that are going to put athletes on the field that match up with your athletes. And neither one is going to be at the Coliseum. So, USC's in a position where it has to come out of the gate playing strong football. It's not like last year where they have half a year to warm up because they don't play anybody until October. That's not this year. They're going to have to play well from the get-go. And so I think that being the case, I think you almost have to go with Miller Moss, who really understands this offense, who knows the players believe in him. I mean, you're not in a position where you can get somebody else up to speed. So I think he has to be the starter, even if you thought Maia was better. And I don't know that he's better. I don't know that. I'm not making that suggestion. I'm simply saying that it wasn't obvious to me watching those two guys on the field Saturday that Miller Moss is the better quarterback. I don't know about that, but that was just one game and it's a fake game. So, it only tells you so much. Okay, let's move on to the defense. Let's start with, what did you like? Mark, what did you like defensively?
The secondary. If you were asking me to give a one-word answer, it would just be the secondary.
From now on in this program, I'm asking you for one-word answers. So
it's actually 2 words, but yes, the second. Look, we all were wondering what it would be like to have a bunch of guys in your defensive backfield who knew how to play the position, turn and look for the ball, play with aggressiveness, and look like the other teams when their cornerbacks are playing cornerback. And we got to see that, and it was pretty cool. And the unique, as Jacoby Covington said, we have a unique defensive back room. The length is, you see it when they walk out to the practice field, but now when you see it in motion, completely different. I talked about that play that DeCarlos Nicholson made. You see Malachi Crawford back, or was that Christian Pierce wearing the yellow jersey, beating Deuce Robinson in the end zone, knocking the ball away late. It was fun to watch. Not one time where you're saying, man, the guy got beat. Maybe that on the pass breakup by DeCarlos Nicholson, but he made up for it. You saw
he was beat, though.
He was beat. Absolutely.
Yeah.
He was beat. Marcellus Williams with one of those explosive spring plays that that we heard, about. By far, they stole the show. They stole the ball. They stole the show. They made the defense look really good. And that's with the defensive line not doing a whole lot. Imagine what happens when the defensive line's better.
Eric, what'd you like? I assume you're going to say secondary too, but I'm going to let you say it. Go ahead.
No, I don't want to say it now.
Okay. Say something.
Yeah, it's that, right? There were so many people that would say, like, why aren't they teaching the cornerbacks to turn their head and knock the ball away? And it's like, they do. Everybody does. They do. They do. If you're not in a position to be able to do it, if you don't have the confidence to be able to do it, you can't. And USC defensive backs, cornerbacks found themselves time and time again, not in a position and not with the confidence to be able to do that. This group seems like they have that and played with that confidence in that spring game. And again, it wasn't like they were in the exact right position every single game or every single snap, and it was just perfection across the board. But you had guys that were getting themselves into position that could turn their head. The Marcellus Williams play is just a guy being an athlete and making a great read and a drop and going up and getting the ball. That sort of confidence in that secondary from, I know Williams is a freshman, but so many of those other guys have played quite a bit against good opposition. I think that's what stood out. I think, Danton Lynn being a secondary guy, having a secondary coach in Doug Belk, like that advancement of that group. And again, it's a lot of new guys. I think that's what really stood out and makes you feel good about kind of the depth back there and just how they're going to play. Because we also heard this spring how much they can do and how much the scheme sort of allows them to, hide coverages and do this stuff. And it didn't feel like they did a whole lot of that. I mean, it was just kind of, hey, pretty much cover two, stay in your spot, make plays when the ball's that way. And they did it pretty well. I think there's a lot more from them. It'll be interesting to see if they can, run some of the more, I don't think there's like a ton of crazy exotic stuff, but some of that stuff and stay sort of as fundamentally sound and not allow busts and that sort of thing. But I think coming away from the spring game, that's the unit you got to be impressed with.
Yeah, I mean, look, the secondary was such a weakness the last few years. I mean, it seemed like all the time you had blown coverages. Now, granted, it's harder to have blown coverages when you're keeping it vanilla and you're running a two deep zone. But I think what USC did primarily is they went out and got better players, right? I mean, that's what they did. USC is dramatically better in the secondary this year than they were last year, not just because they have a better secondary coach, but they do, but because they have better guys back there. And part of it is length, but it's not just that. I mean, the guy who's probably going to be the superstar out of this group is under 6 feet, right? And he's a freshman. I don't know if he's going to be a superstar this year, but he looks like a guy who is going to be a big time player. Yeah, it was nice to see that. Look, it's hard to judge the defense when the offense isn't really game planning and when you're playing to thud. If they were playing to thud on Saturdays last year, the defensive stats would have looked a lot better than they did. USC's defenders have occasionally been able to create some amount of thud even when they're not tackling people. So it's hard to know exactly, but I do feel, and I was confident going into this season that the secondary would be dramatically better, and I think they're going to be, and I think they'll be better yet in the fall. You have some injuries back there right now that I think when you have the full safety group, and we'll see if Zion Branch stays at safety or whether he moves up to nickel, but I think you're talking about a much better group. But it is hard to know. And because if you're not tackling, you're not tackling. Let's talk about what we didn't love. Start us off, Eric. What do we not love about what we saw Saturday with the defense?
I don't love Bear Alexander not playing and what the defense looks like without him. And honestly, what you don't love from that is even if he is playing, what happens if something goes on there, right? I mean, he's not been he did well last year and was on the field quite a bit, but there've been some injury things and some of that with him. And so I don't think you love all the interior defensive line depth, especially Isaiah Rakes into the transfer portal and now headed to Auburn. Uh, that's a position where they've talked about, the defensive line needing to add or looking to add in the portal. I think there's something there, and eventually, the numbers are growing and the young guys especially. But when we're talking about that 2024 season coming up and who's ready to go right now and how deep are you and are you an elite looking defensive line, I don't think there was anything from that game that made you say, okay, this is totally fixed. Now I will say in terms of the defense, the defensive line, it wasn't a catastrophe, right? They're not getting blown off the ball. It's not huge gaping holes. Running backs aren't escaping into the safeties untouched or anything like that. But I think what stood out defensively is you still have some work to do up there up front.
Mark?
Yeah, Eric wrapped it up for me. It's seeing that the defensive line is gradually getting better, but it still needs help. I mean, that's what really stood out. And, I brought it up. Eric just mentioned it as far as Bear Alexander. I'm just going to say he sat out spring camp. There's no other way to say it. Whatever his injuries are, whether he's dinged up or, some are speculating he's got a hamstring injury. I don't know. Whatever the case may be, they need more help inside on that defensive line. So, I know it's odd to me that you need help and you've got a good coaching duo in that defensive line room, and that's still an area of concern right now. Again, we're going to talk about that with the transfer portal stuff, but yeah, it was a defensive line not giving me that tingly feeling. I like what I saw from the secondary. The linebackers were there to make plays, and there was nothing getting beyond them in the running game, but you didn't really see much of a push up front. And again, you're not allowed to touch the quarterback. So how hard are you going to go knowing that even if you get into the backfield, you got to stop once you get into the backfield? It's hard to play defensive line in the spring game, I guess is what I'm ultimately saying.
Yeah. Well, it's been hard for USC to play in the defensive line on Saturdays too. And here's the thing. I think that there are some players up front who I expect will become pretty good players, and hopefully in short order. I do think Elijah Hughes and Sam Green and Braylon Shelby, Cameron Fountain, who flashed Saturday. I think you have some guys there who are young and talented who I think are going to become really good football players. Yeah. But if you look at that group without Bear Alexander in it, and you ask yourself, who's the guy that offensive coordinators look at and say, we got to figure out what to do about that guy? The answer is nobody, not a single guy in that unit. And, USC put out a true sophomore, a freshman right now, but he'll be a true sophomore left tackle. They put out a right tackle who is a talented kid, but has been an underachiever when he's been at USC. And those two guys shut down the edge rushers without any trouble. And I think USC is better on the edge than they are inside. I don't know what to make of that other than it was an underwhelming performance. You did not see guys getting in the backfield. You did not see guys driving offensive linemen back. You saw guys that were in their gaps, right? Which is nice because far too often over the last couple of years with Grinch's defense is you'd have running plays where there's just a 10-yard hole, right? That you could run like 7 running backs through that hole at the same time if you wanted. You didn't see that. They weren't incompetent, but there was nobody there that would scare me if I'm the opposition. I would say, yeah, I feel pretty comfortable. I can block all those guys. It's hard to be a great defense. It's hard to be a great football team if you don't have some guys up front that the other side just can't block. And I don't know that USC has any of those guys right now. Maybe Bear Alexander if he gets on the field. He certainly has the talent to do that, and he flashed at times last year. He was not consistent doing that, right? Bear Alexander was not Mike Patterson. He was not Cedric Ellis. He was not in that universe of play last year. He's a guy who was talented and would make some plays, and you saw him come off the ball, and you say, okay, he's a problem for people. But that's a guy who needs to get better still, and he hasn't been practicing. Maybe he can't practice. I assume he can't, but that's not great. That's a guy who needs to be developing his skills with really good coaches. So I don't know what they have up front. And do they need to add some to that? They probably do. Are they going to? I don't know. Okay.
That's sorry, Chris. The defensive line feels like the wide receiver group last year, right? Where we were talking about, oh, there's good players across the board, but without a number one who tilts the field and shakes everything up on the opposite side, that's tough. It's tough to ask your 4 defensive linemen, hey, you all have to win your one-on-one on every play, right? And there's a chance you could have a second guy coming at you or a third guy, and you just don't. Without that confidence of, hey, this guy's going to win 90% of his snaps, and now we can do some things on the other side. That is just such a great feeling for the line. And we've seen some real impact defensive ends and transfer portal guys go to other places. Jared Verse made that, and right, Florida State got him and Braden Fisk. And when they had those two guys working, when you have a guy like that can just change things up front, then all of a sudden those guys who you think, hey, this guy can be pretty good, now all of a sudden he starts winning a ton and playing so much better because you can play off those other guys. I mean, that's been true forever.
And we also saw flashes from Cameron Fountain. I mean, there's a reason they went and wanted this guy really badly. Him just reading and running down the line and getting into the backfield and getting the ball carrier, he had some impressive plays in there a couple times. So if he continues to get more comfortable at this level of play, look, is he going to be an instant impact player by the time, USC kicks off against LSU? No, but he showed you, he's got the capability to be one of USC's next big time defensive ends. He showed some stuff out there.
It'd be nice if the 2026 USC defensive line could come back and play this season, right? I mean, the idea of where they're gonna be and where they're kind of the trajectory is going is awesome.
Yeah.
But what are you ready for right now this year?
Yeah, look, I'm excited about Cameron Fountain. I think everybody is. I'm excited about Braylon Shelby too. USC needs Shelby to be a difference maker in September. I don't know that you can expect that of a true freshman in Cameron Fountain, although he has the physical tools to do it. Braylon Shelby needs to be a terror off the edge in September. I don't know that we saw that Saturday. It doesn't mean we won't see it in the fall, but I think they have to have it. I mean, Anthony Lucas needs to be a terror from the defensive end spot. He was not Saturday, right? They handled him fine. And for all of his talent, he's been handled fine the entire time he's been at USC. That's a guy who needs to live up to his talent and hasn't done it yet. Is he going to? I don't know. But if USC is going to be good defensively, not just okay, they're going to be okay defensively, right? They're not going to be inept like they have been. They're going to be okay. But if they want to be good, they have to have some guys up front who can, they have to have Bear Alexander playing and healthy. And they have to have some other guys up front that are really hard to block. Braylon Shelby probably needs to be one of those guys. Anthony Lucas probably needs to be one of those guys. Those guys have until September to really figure out what this new defensive coaching staff is teaching and make plays. But guys, remember, the best USC defenses tend to have guys in the front seven who you couldn't block. That's why they were good. I mean, this secondary is going to be just fine compared to USC's 2004 secondary. They are going to be. The difference is that when you have Mike Patterson and Sean Cody and Kenichi Udeze, you have three guys on the defensive line that you can't block one-on-one. You can't. And if you have three guys up front and you can't block one-on-one, what happens? You have a lot of guys getting tackled in the backfield, right? You have a lot of quarterbacks who can't step into the pocket and throw the ball downfield, and you have a lot of shutouts, which they did. That's the sort of thing that USC does not have right now, and we know that. I'm not saying anything that USC fans don't already know. I'm just suggesting that USC needs to get better at that position, and not just in the transfer portal, but the extremely talented guys they have need to start playing like it. And I don't know that they have yet. And that includes Bear Alexander, who was the best guy in the defensive front last year, but was not a first-team all-conference guy. And if you look at his stats, he did okay. And that's all he did. Bear Alexander needs to get better too. All of the three guys I'm talking about, Bear and Shelby and Anthony Lucas, those three guys need to play to the level of their talent. If they do, USC can actually be pretty decent up front. But that means we need to see a jump from them. So we'll see if that happens. Okay. So, spring recap. Where do we stand, guys? Are we more optimistic than we were before spring practice? Less optimistic than we were? What do you think? Eric, start us off.
I think I'm the same optimistic. So I went into spring and we did a couple kind of exercise things where I had to look at kind of the top 15, 20 guys on this roster. And you run out of sure things have proven it at USC and at this level fairly quickly. Even the guys, Kamari Ramsey at safety was good for UCLA. The idea is he's going to be great, right? He's got a year kind of advantage on everybody coming in, having played for Denton. You heard from Lincoln Riley that he was really good. Hasn't done it here with this group, and that's a question that you have to answer. So across the board, it's like every guy that you really like and really think can contribute heavily this year, there's always that if he continues, right? If he meets projections, if he keeps stepping up, even like you mentioned with Bear Alexander, if he takes the next step, he's a dominant defensive line. Very few people, even Zachariah Branch as a wide receiver, look, as a returner, he's the best in the country. But as a wide receiver, if he takes the next step, right? Jacoby Lane has shown flashes. The bowl game was great. Spring was great. If he takes the next step in the season. So Miller Moss, Jonah Monheim going to a new position. It's like every sort of potential headliner is if he takes the next step, if this works, if the transition to a new team works. Easton Mascarenas aren't, right? First team all conference last year at Oregon State. Based on kind of what the transfer linebackers have done and what the USC defense has done, would I bet on him being good? Yes. Do I know it's a guarantee that he's done it in this defense with this group around him? No. And I think that that's where you still are coming out of spring. The other thing coming in was this defense is going to be better. It's like you said, it just is going to be better. I would be surprised if it's like top 25 nationally good this year. I would be floored if it's down in the low 80s, 90s, certainly in the hundreds. So, and I think that you still have that feel about it. Again, it was not dominant in terms of the spring game and the front six or whatever you want to call that, but based on what these guys have said, the players have said in terms of the install and how we feel about it and the confidence we're playing with and all of that, that's what you figured would happen at the end of spring when they went out and hired very competent to potentially elite defensive coaches. And that's where you still are coming out of it. So I don't think there was anything this spring where it was just, oh my gosh, we are so much farther ahead or so much further behind than kind of what you thought coming into spring. Having that is sort of good and bad, right? I mean, there wasn't anything where there are massive red flags. They're going to get blown out by LSU. They are not ready for anybody this year. There also isn't the, wow, we're way ahead and we're kind of elite with known guys at some of these spots. So I don't think there's any panic coming out of spring. I think this team has kind of embraced that. Look, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going day at a time, get better, improve. And I think that they are in an okay spot by the fall. Again, it's what do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about being a national championship contender where you are beating Texas and Georgia and those schools right now this year? Or do you want to kind of keep that climb and just be, a few steps better than you were last year and compete in the Big Ten? I think that's where you can make the difference here in the portal and through the summer.
What Mark wants is a close loss to Stanford, but sadly they're not on the schedule. So, Mark, Eric tells us that he's exactly in the same place he was before because he'd already had this figured out before spring started. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm slightly more optimistic than Eric. Look, if we're setting the scale of 0 to 100, with 0 being no confidence, 100 being complete confidence, and we're starting at 50, I moved my scale to 60. That's where I'm at on the confidence level coming out of spring. I saw enough improvement on the defensive side of the ball. And I actually disagree with Eric. I think USC's defense will be statistically ranked higher, maybe not in that top 25, but maybe higher than people anticipate because of the secondary. And look, if we're being honest, the big conference isn't known for throwing the ball around with proficiency. So that alone is going to, artificially inflate or I don't know, deflate USC's defensive numbers. So they're going to look better there. And Miller Moss also said something that's happening during practice is, those open spaces that were there for the quarterbacks and the skill position players to get open and make plays, they're not quite so open anymore. And that's going to help them as well when they start playing in the big conference because things tend to be more in a phone booth. You're playing more short game. There's more running game. So I think that's going to lend itself helping USC as well. So that's why my needle moved a little bit more on the optimism scale as far as what we're seeing coming out of spring camp. With that said, plenty of work to be done. Prophet Brown, made some really nice comments as well. Everybody check their egos. We're all the same. One common goal. So as long as they maintain that same locker room culture throughout the summer, nobody really being the face of the program, that's going to bode well continuing going forward.
Yeah, I tweaked Eric, but I think I'm in the same position he was, which is I didn't see anything that surprised me. What you'd like to see in the spring is a guy or two come out of nowhere and really turn into a big time player that you didn't expect. I'm not sure that happened. I think there were some guys that were pleasant surprises. I think Jaden Richardson is a pleasant surprise. I already named him. I think that Brian Jackson's probably going to be in a position where he could contribute early, but that doesn't surprise me much with a 230-pound freshman running back. But nor do I look at the team and say and see any positions where I say, if that guy's playing in the fall, we are in trouble, right? You don't see that either. You see some guys where you say, okay, I wish we were a little better at that spot, but you don't see gross incompetence anywhere. And that's nice too, because we have seen that some of the past. So this is a team that needs to get better. They're going to get better defensively. How much better is going to be an interesting question. If the offensive line improves from last year, then you can expect that Lincoln Riley will have his usual offensive performance where they're going to score around 40 points a game. And if they do that and the defense is competent, it's going to be a pretty good football team. It's a tough schedule, but it's also a fairly manageable schedule in that a lot of the big name teams lost coaches and quarterbacks and a ton of starters. So, I mean, LSU is always going to be a tough out. That's a game you can win, right? Playing at Michigan, that's a tough assignment every single year, but that's a game you can win. So, I mean, and you go down the schedule and you see that everywhere. Penn State, I don't know if Penn State will score points this year or not. Can Wisconsin throw a forward pass this year? I don't know, probably not. I mean, so you go down the schedule and you look at a lot of teams with big names, you think, okay, but they're beatable. But those are also teams that are going to have athletes that can beat you if you're not any good. And so I think that USC is full of question marks right now, and we're not going to get many of those answered until September. All right, let's talk about recruiting. Some big name high school recruits on campus this past weekend, and also a defensive back in the portal who's committed to USC. Let's start with the defensive back. McKinney, what can you tell us about this kid from Florida State?
Yeah, so Greedy Vance commits. He started at Louisville, then went to Florida State. A few of the things that stand out, this is one of those, it feels like very position-specific additions. This was we need a nickel. We want a guy that we feel confident can play nickel. This is a veteran guy who's played quite a bit of football. So you bring Jalen Smith back at nickel. He missed, I mean, virtually all of spring with an injury that seems like he'll be back and you know, be in the mix to start this fall. But when Tre'Quan Fagans goes into the portal, now all of a sudden, you know, we saw Anthony Beavers play some at nickel. We saw Prophet Brown play some at nickel. This was kind of just a clear indication that Dan Lynn and Lincoln Riley are saying, no, we need a nickel to bring in and do this. I think Dan Lynn's got some ability to mix and match that and go bigger or smaller or do whatever, but clearly he did not feel like we are absolutely wrapped up in the secondary. The timing of it is interesting, right? Like, are there other holes? Probably, but boy, you want to feel really good about all your spots defensively. And so whenever those things pop up, this was a guy that USC really wanted. I think in the portal, you can tell when USC says, hey, that's a guy we want, they're on a fairly quick visit, wrap it up, and that's what they were able to do here. So again, it's another piece. Now you've got between the two corners, the two safeties, and potentially Greedy there at nickel, potentially you got 5 new starters in the secondary. I think Jalen Smith is probably Jacoby Covington also obviously at corner. Those two guys are probably the best bets to start among holdovers at that spot. But certainly now the potential for 5 new guys in the secondary.
Yeah, what do you want to say about Greedy, Mark? Anything to add?
No, I like Eric made the point Eric made was the one I was going to make was you need help at wide receiver with numbers. You need help in the trenches, you know, at offensive tackle and inside on the defensive line. But here you come, another defensive back on the heels of, you know, the secondary looking really good without Tre'Quan Fagans. You know, you had Prophet Brown playing a little bit of the nickel role, and he's running back interceptions for 106 yards. You got players back there. You got Zion Branch, who, you know, we're anticipating coming back healthy. You mentioned Jalen Smith. You like what Greedy brings, because from what I understand, he's a great locker room presence as well. So if that's the biggest thing that he adds, besides, you know, making plays on the field, great. I just think right now everybody's looking at, hey, when are we going to get some defensive tackle help? When are we going to get some veteran experience at the offensive tackle? That's what I think people are waiting for and what we're looking for coming out of this weekend. And right now, with what, 7-8 days left of the transfer window being open, names are going in, but Lincoln Riley talked about, you know, for every one guy from USC that jumps in the transfer portal, there'd be 100 standing in line to come. Where's that line?
Yeah, I think nickel was a real position of need for USC, and so I'm not surprised they made a jump there. Prophet Brown might be ready to be a big time player for them. I don't know. I thought he played pretty well the other day. I don't know if he gives you a physical presence in the box, but if you want your nickel as a third corner, that might be a guy who can do that. I've long thought that Zion Branch is a natural nickel. He's a guy who's athletic, but also has some size, who probably can give you a physical presence in the box. But I don't know if Zion can stay healthy. You have a returning starter at that position. How do I word this? Jalen Smith needs to get much better if he wants to play that spot this year. because that was a gigantic problem in that defense pretty consistently last year. I thought he played well in the bowl game, but that was a problem. It was a problem in the run game. It was a problem in the pass game. And so this is a guy who's been hurt, so he hasn't been able to show the coaches that he's made a jump. If I'm the coach and I look at it and say, well, I got an injured Zion Branch, I've got Jalen Smith, all I have is game tape on him, and I don't love that. And then I have a guy who's really an outside corner that I'm playing at nickel. Makes sense to me they picked that up. They could probably play with Prophet Brown and nickel and still be a pretty competent defense. But I do think that's a position where they need a guy. Whether this is the right guy or not, I don't know. I haven't watched him play, and he doesn't seem like he's going to be a physical presence, not a particularly big guy. But we'll see. It makes sense to me they got a nickel. Mark, you want to say something?
I was going to ask Eric, the guy who they're linking, who the staff's having that video conference call with, the linebacker from Jacksonville State. If they're looking at him at that hybrid nickel role, where does Anthony Beavers fit in that role? I mean, they're similar, size-wise, right?
Yeah, that kid ended up coming to Arkansas, so didn't really go anywhere there. Yeah, Eric Gentry's a guy that I still think is like a really intriguing potential kind of nickel piece in some situations. So I think you do have a lot of pieces. It's again the wide receiver position from last year. If you do not have a guy that you can say, this is our guy, this is our number one, we think this is a big time elite player at that, just having a few good pieces to put there is tough. It doesn't make you an elite defense. And so I can understand the idea of, we've got some options, but that's the guy. We've got a ton of film on him. We've watched him play. We really like him. That's the guy we're going to go with. I understand doing that at a bunch of different spots because nickel, I feel like it was, years ago, the nickel guy was like, oh, he'd come on third downs and he was like your fifth or sixth best defense back. Your nickel's got to be maybe your best defensive back now. I mean, certainly most versatile, the guy you asked to do the most. You have got to have a great nickel to make plays. And we saw that. I mean, the UCLA nickel last year, he did a ton. They do a ton in Dan Lynn's defense. They do a ton in everybody's defense. So you need to feel really good about that spot. And if you're bringing in a guy right now after spring and after you were able to watch film on all these guys, that says enough to me about what the defensive staff felt about their options there. Not that they were bad, but that there was a guy out there that they wanted to go get.
Yeah. Also had a bunch of high school guys on campus again. The headliner, of course, Jakeem Stewart, who is the number one prospect overall for the class of 26. We'll see if he stays in the class of 26. I don't know that there's any news to report here. Again, this is a guy who USC would not have gotten a look at the last 5, 6, 7 years. He's coming, and not only is he showing up, he's showing up with his high school coach. They're taking USC very seriously. Doesn't mean USC is going to get him. We don't know that. But if you have enough of these elite defensive linemen show up and say, I could really see myself here. I really like the coaches. I like what they're doing. I love LA. You get enough guys like that show up, you're probably going to get a few of them. And that's the sort of thing USC has not been doing for some years. So I don't know. Eric, is there anything else that we should know when it comes to the high school guys that visited this past weekend?
Yeah, right. There were a lot, but the fact that you talked about Jakeem Stewart, that's it. That was the big one from this in terms of getting him on campus again, getting him on campus, not just for the game, but being able to recruit him a little bit for a couple days. He's going to be back in the summer. And you talk about him being serious about USC. That is what is coming out of this. He talked about kind of the plan they have for him on the field, off the field, and he loves it. Yeah, these are guys that are down to Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Ohio State. I mean, that's what it's been, right? With guys like that. The fact that USC maybe is leading right now, maybe is the number one school for him. That's another, gigantic statement for Eric Anderson. It is a million years until he gets on a campus, even if he moves forward, right? Even if he comes into the 2025 class, that's so much time between when he actually has to sign and show up. I mean, we're talking about the 2025 linemen that USC has committed. There's a ton of time, that they can change their minds. But the momentum they have right now in terms of high school recruits and getting them to kind of see the vision and buy in, and how they've established Eric Henderson specifically as the guy to play for in, I mean weeks that he's been in college. It's pretty remarkable that they've been able to do that. Again, you got to get through the 2024 season. You got to get through a lot of stuff and get better between now and then. But yeah, that was a big visit that's probably going to lead to a few more for him.
Yeah, and USC fans should keep in mind that when you're trying to pull kids out of the South, you're going up against some heavyweight programs. You're trying to get the kids to go a long way from home. That's not going to be for everybody. Even the kids that are really excited about USC, it's not going to be for all of them. But I don't know. You go to high school in the Deep South and you just poll all the kids in a random English class. Hey, how many of you would like to live in a really fancy apartment in Los Angeles next year? You're going to get some takers. And that's why this is all about the numbers. I don't know what Jakeem Stewart's going to do. I don't know whether they'll hold on to the guys they got commitments from last month. What I do know is that if you show Los Angeles is different from all these other programs they're looking at, right? It's different. LSU and Alabama and Georgia, I'm sure there are some differences amongst them, but come on, they're all right. These are all major Southern football powers, college towns. Everybody who lives within 100 miles of those places lives or dies with them. Those places are all very similar. USC is not. It's different from every other program in the country. And when USC is playing well and coaching well, there are guys from other parts of the country that say, yeah, I think spending some time on the beach on the weekends might be fun. Whether he's one of them or not, I don't know. But you get enough of those guys on campus and you have something to sell to them, you're going to land some of them. And that's what USC needs to do. Mark, let's start with you on this one. Last question before we get to the Arledge 10 questions, which I guess means it's the 11th, the next last question. But Big Mike Williams coming back to Troy. I have no idea what his job is. I read it. I still don't know what his job is, but I'm excited he's coming back. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you, Chris. I have no idea really what his job description entails, but it's not a bad thing, right? When you're getting the band back together, the fact that, they're working behind the scenes to get those players who were a part of the program when they were really successful and having them show their faces and be at practice and now be a part of the staff. That's only a positive. I mean, look, you had Matt Leinart, who actually was behind the scenes working this whole thing out. He was working with Lincoln Riley to make this happen. Every now and then you'll hear Lendale White pop off with, which I would love to have him around the program more. You want guys who are super competent and who love the program and who want to talk about the program. And I think essentially that's what Mike's job is going to be. Recruits come on campus. Hey, go look at that guy. That's the guy who dominated every single UCLA defensive back that he played against. So if you're thinking about going there, why don't you go listen to him and he'll tell you what it's like to play wide receiver at USC. It's somebody who can say, all right, you know what? You didn't like what the coach just said to you. Let me help you out. Let me show you how you can do things so the coaches will look at you differently. It's more of a liaison role. It's a figurehead role, but he knows how to develop relationships. He went from being a really good wide receiver in college to be, fast tracking himself at the high school level as a high school coach. And if he wants to continue being a coach at the college level or beyond, he now has his foot in the door at USC. He loves the place. I think he started to get a feel for that last year when he threw that tweet out at one of his former high school players who used USC and UCLA in the same sentence. And he kind of jokingly admonished him, don't ever do that again. So it's that type of thing. This is what it means to be a USC Trojan. And here's the office. You go talk to him and he'll remind you what it means to be a USC Trojan. That's the role he has on the staff.
Yeah, I don't know how quick USC is going to be to hire Lindell White on in a position at the university. I'll say this: I'd sure love him to have on this show. If there's a friend of Lindell White out there, please ask him to come and join us. That guy's fantastic.
Yes.
Mike Williams. I don't know if Lincoln Riley said some nice things about Mike Williams and how great he was. I don't think Lincoln Riley has any idea, right? Because he didn't watch that 26 games or whatever it was that Mike Williams played at USC. Mike Williams is the best receiver I've ever seen at USC. And I've seen some fantastic receivers at USC, right? I mean, USC's churned out a bunch of superstar receivers. Mike Williams was better than Keyshawn Johnson. Mike Williams was better than Robert Woods. He was better than everybody I've seen. He was an absolute monster. Now, I don't know how that translates into his current position, but I suspect one thing Mike Williams can help us with is to talk to USC's current players about the things that matter at USC. Beating UCLA matters. Beating Notre Dame matters. Some of these traditions, Mike Williams understands that stuff. And so maybe he can be a force for good there. Eric, what do you think? You're probably happy to have Mike Williams coming back in any capacity, right?
Yeah, so he's the director of player development. This was the role that Chris Carter had at USC previously, and basically he'll be involved with a ton of recruiting. And I mean, when they have players on campus, he can sort of speak to them about this is kind of what we've touched on a little bit here. This is what it's like this is what it's like to go through the process of playing at USC and then how to set up for life after. I think he is in a specifically interesting position to be able to talk about that as a guy who excelled at football at USC, got drafted in the top 10, and then it just did not work. And so how do you keep pushing there? Hung on for a little bit, had that year in Seattle with kind of a comeback thing, and then kind of quickly transitioned into a very respected coach down in Florida, bounced around a couple places there and produced some guys, and now he's here. So I think he has kind of some real insight in terms of how do you make the best of your time at USC to do well in football and also set yourself up kind of for after football. And that's kind of it. He sort of is a guide, through their college experience and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, he's got a chance to sort of impress on parents, how we're going to take care of the kids here, how we're going to, make sure that they have the best experiences they go through. And yeah, I would play this guy's highlight on a loop. I thought it was interesting when you talked about his performance. There was a video that came out. I think Matt Leinart posted it, but he did kind of a game with Millard Moss at USC's Pro Day where they went down and picked like their all-time USC quarterback, receivers, whatever, all of that. Matt Leinart had a chance to take wide receivers, and he said Mike Williams, and I think he said like the most dominant player I've ever seen in college, and so that's you're not going to argue that he was
Mike
unbelievable.
Mike Williams or Reggie Bush overlapped at USC, and Mike Williams was the better player. I know he was a year ahead, and I know I made an enemy of Keyshawn Johnson on this. And in fairness, Keyshawn didn't get to play for Pete Carroll. He didn't get to play in a Norm Chow offense. I'm just saying, if I'm exaggerating, it's only barely. Mike Williams was extraordinary, an absolutely extraordinary talent. And in the middle of his true freshman season, he was the best player on the field almost every single week. With a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback throwing to him, he was the best player on the field. It was really something to behold.
Look, if the USC secondary has watched the first part of this and their heads have gotten a little bit big, I would like the USC staff to throw Mike Williams just one rep against each guy this summer in a PRP. I bet he still has it.
Right. 5-yard slant. Go defend it. Good luck.
I mean, Lane Kiffin loved that bubble screen. The reason he loved it is because if he threw it to Mike Williams, it was 12 yards every time. I mean, what are you going to do? He was an incredible player. And by the way, a guy that was not highly recruited, right? I mean, the Florida schools, I think, wanted to turn him into a defensive end. He came to USC, had a disastrous performance against Kansas State early on, where he probably dropped 6 or 7 passes. Frankly, he probably lost USC that game. I mean, just couldn't catch the ball. And from that point on, he just murdered everybody who was in front of him until he left USC. It was incredible. All right, well, I'm getting on my Mike Williams. I got a Mike Williams jersey right there. I love the guy. He was incredible. And if you didn't watch USC in that 2003, 2004 time period, you probably don't get it.
Well, if you
Okay.
watched him receiving the news from Lincoln Riley, I mean, it looked like he was a recruit again. He looked like a freshman that was coming to USC for the first time. It was special to watch. It gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, I'm glad to have him back. Okay, are you ready, guys? It's time to play our game. Are there just 10 questions? The score is 0-0. I know that there's often some uncertainty about that going into this one. Sometimes people have been docked points before we start, but not today. All right, here we go. Question number 1. Who is USC starting quarterback for the first game of the 2025 season? Not this season, but next. Mark Holken, go.
Can I get a rule clarification? Is this an acceptable answer? Not Miller Moss.
No, because that doesn't name. You're taking the field. You're taking the field. Now, if you want to give me that answer, you can give me that answer, Mark. I mean, I already know what I'm going to do with it, but go ahead.
It's the field.
Okay, Eric McKinney, who's going to start for USC first game 2025?
I'm gonna say Miller Moss, and I would like, because of Mark's pick, I would like just incredible odds on that, right? I mean, I feel like things should swing to me quite a bit if I'm right about that. But he strikes me as a guy who's going to do well this year, and strikes me as a guy who's not going to want to just have 1 year as the starter at USC. And next spring might, I mean, it'll get interesting, right? I'm not super confident about that, but I've got faith in Miller Moss in terms of playing well this year and sticking around.
Did we not have this conversation in the beginning of the show? I'm just saying. All of a sudden, I'm out there in left field all of a sudden.
Who are you criticizing, me or Eric? I don't even understand what you're saying.
It felt like my answer came out of left field all of a sudden. And we were having this conversation earlier in the show that this might be the year where Lincoln Riley has that opportunity to make that change because of what's coming and what's in the system right now.
Yeah, I think look, I'm going to give Eric the point, and I knew I was going to give Eric the point from the moment you didn't name a player, but I do think he's probably right. Miller Moss is not a guy who's going to play for 1 year and go to the first or second round of the NFL draft, I don't think. He's not going to pull a Mark Sanchez. In part because I don't think he'll be a top 5 choice like Sanchez was. That's not a criticism, Mark. I get that. And if he starts and plays well, and I think he will, it's going to be pretty difficult to unseat him as an incumbent. So I think it's probably him, but I do think, for the reasons we talked about, I do think there's some uncertainty there. Okay. Eric, best unexpected performance in the spring game.
I had a few here, but look, it's been a while, and so I've become accustomed to the rules. So I'm going to give you one name.
Yeah.
So there's a few things. I'm going to say Kobe Pepe in terms of the unexpected of he's a starter, right? I know Bear is out, but I think there's something that he can contribute to this defense, what they want them to do, which is him just cause a 10-car pileup in the middle of the defensive line. And I think he can do that a little bit. Certainly going to be more valuable in this defense than he was in the previous defense. So the fact that this is a guy who went in the transfer portal, was basically erased from the roster and everybody's memory that he was even at USC, to now starting in this spring game, and I think contributing and moving things around a little bit inside again. And this is, I know we just finished talking about how the interior of the defensive line was not good in this one, but the jump from expecting 0 and getting kind of competent snaps and potentially a solid depth piece there, that's my shot. And I know there's another guy at that position that could be an answer too.
Okay, well, maybe you'll get a chance to talk to him after, but you only get one answer. Mark gets to have he gets to have the run of the field. I know that he likes that. An unexpected answer from Eric McKinney on an unexpected question. Mark, who is it?
Yeah, I would go with Dave John Lafitte if the defensive line showed a little bit more. So I'm going to go, and again, it's hard to even say it's unexpected because you anticipate seeing a lot of the younger players get most of the run in the spring game. But AP, I thought he was the running back that said, you know what, don't forget about me. You talk about Quentin Joyner. Lincoln Riley talks about him all the time, making a big play, popping one off. He did. We knew that Woody Marks came over because he's going to be that veteran presence. And then you've got the, Chris, you mentioned him, 230 pounds of Brian Jackson, NFL back already. Everybody forgets about Marion Peterson. Last year, he reminded me of our favorite running back, Lendale White. He ran and looked like Lendale White on Saturday. And I'm hoping that that becomes more prevalent once the season starts. So he's my choice.
I like both answers. You both get a point. I was surprised by Eric's though. I didn't expect that, but you're right. I mean, what's more unexpected than that? I don't think anybody expected him to be on the roster not too long ago. So I don't think he's going to be a starter for long, but he was a starter and he did not embarrass himself, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's not like those defensive linemen they weren't getting driven back 8 yards on every play. It's just they weren't taking it to the offense the way I think we need somebody to. Okay, good.
I think
2-1.
sorry. I think Joey Olsen needs a shout there too. I mean, a true freshman tight end. It's not like he was catching 60-yard passes, but like very competent as a run blocker. Caught the ball well. It's not a spot tight end where we expect huge numbers, but again, a true freshman that didn't get a ton of publicity coming in. Solid performance there too. That's not my official answer because I see you writing stuff down. Makes me real nervous when you write stuff down.
Look, I would love to be in the room when Eric goes to a psychologist and the psychologist goes right to his notepad.
Don't write that down. Don't write any of this down.
Eric just shows him the tapes of these shows. This is the problem. No, look, I agree with that. You could make an argument for Mason Murphy, I think, who played pretty well. And you could make an argument for Jaden Richardson, who I've already mentioned a couple times, but you're getting a guy from a Division III school. You don't know what you're going to get from him, but you got a guy who I think can contribute. Yeah, a lot of good possibilities. Both of you get a point. It's 2-1 McKinney. Number 3. I can't remember who's supposed to go first this time. Does anybody remember? Does anybody know? Nobody wants to say.
I went first last, so Mark's up first.
Mark's up first. All right, here we go. Best fight instructor and mentor: Yoda, Mickey Goldmill from Rocky, or Mick, or Mr. Miyagi. What will it be?
So I'll give you part of my answer I gave you when we were talking about this. I love 3 small guys who talk funny right off the bat. That's really where I thought you were going with this. Look, Yoda taught Obi-Wan, so there's a reason why he's on this list. Mick taught Rocky. Mr. Miyagi is my pick, and let me tell you why. He taught you more than just how to, win karate. He taught you how to catch flies with a chopstick. If you can do that, you can accomplish anything in life. That was what he said, right? He taught you how to paint a house. Wax on, wax off. He was teaching you defense first before he taught you anything.
He was teaching you home improvement even.
He taught you horticulture. He showed you how to get those bonsai trees looking just right. Look, find me anybody, including Yoda, who can defend a crane kick, and I'll change my answer. But right now,
Sato's nephew in Karate Kid 2 was able to defend it. Don't bring that in here. Okay, go ahead.
I'm going
Mr. Miyagi. Look, there's no wrong answer on this one. All 3 are great. You're going to go with Miyagi. There's nothing wrong with that. McKinney, who are you going with?
I feel like I don't need to pick. You did my job for me, right? I mean, you showed him why he's wrong. So I think the answer is Yoda, and I'll walk through this. I don't love the fact that they keep making Star Wars movies, and I haven't seen a ton, but it feels like the more they do, the poorer he's going to look as an instructor and mentor, because they're going to develop so many plot holes where it's like, why didn't Yoda just say this or do this or whatever? So he's my answer, and I will tell you why the other two are wrong. First of all, the crane kick is lunacy. If you watch how it works in the movie, it's lunacy that it works, right? Your opponent has to run and put his face
Just leave
into
like that.
where your foot is going to go.
Yeah.
It's if you stand there and do nothing, you've beaten the crane kick, right? So that I don't like.
Until
And
he
it's,
unbalances himself because he's there on one foot.
yeah, and so eventually he tires out, and now
I
you
was
know,
reading
okay,
that
that's
on
the,
one.
Just
so you know
circle
that's the leg
around
to
him.
go after.
Just circle around him, and what's he going to do? He's going to
It's
follow the crane? No, that doesn't work.
It's garbage. It's absolute garbage. And then it's just exploitation of free labor, the rest of it. I don't hate the guy. I appreciate that he's taking advantage of what he can do, but it's not the right answer. Mick would be I was initially going to go with him, but what he strikes me as the he strikes me as the college coach, the college head coach that gets hired now, and he's 80 years old, and his idea is for every single practice during the spring, summer, and fall is like 10 hours of the Oklahoma drill. And that's it. And that's the way we're gonna get ready for games. And you just can't do that anymore. You can't that doesn't work. You can do it for a bit, but you can't do it all the time. And that's why Yoda's a little bit of a default there, but I think he's the answer.
He lived in a swamp though, man.
He did, and when Luke first finds him there, he's all weird. He says weird things. He acts like he's got an IQ of like 28. What's that all about?
I don't love the
He
pick.
should-
Look, I don't love it. It's just the other two kind of eliminate themselves.
Here's the thing. I want to go with Mick on this. I really want to. He has the best quotes, right? I mean, Mick's quotes are amazing, and he has the best training techniques. He's throwing a chicken around, makes me feel like a Kentucky Fried Idiot. I mean, look, this is fantastic stuff. And he turns around Rocky by taking away his locker, and then he has to get serious. I love Mick. The problem is Rocky got better after Mick died. He got better after Mick died, like substantially better. So it can't be Mick. Mr. Miyagi is the only one that turns somebody into a fighter in like 3 weekends, which is both amazing and ridiculous. You don't become a martial arts expert in 3 weeks. I don't care how many cars you wax. So the problem I have with Miyagi is that the whole thing's a lie. I love the movie, but the whole thing's a lie. There's no truth to it. Yoda, on the other hand, was a legend that was teaching for 900 years, but it seems to me that he kind of failed on his biggest task, right? I mean, just blew it. So the answer is none of them. Nobody gets a point. All right, let's go to number 4. Eric, Mike Garrett once tried to hire Lou Holtz, which made me throw up in my mouth just a little bit. Who is the current coach that, if USC hired them, would be hardest for you to stop hating and start liking?
So, look, I don't want to run afoul of the rules the way Mark just
No.
absolutely destroyed himself in question 1. But if I could have a clarification, does this include coaches that would be hired back to USC or who have never coached at USC before?
Thanks for asking the question, Eric, because I was there.
Okay, no, look, ordinarily I don't like to give clarifications on questions, and it irritates me if you ask. But no, he's not bringing back Hackett or Helton. He's not doing that. It's somebody from outside the program.
So Brian Kelly, and that's a slam dunk. And I don't know if there's a number 2 for me.
Okay, Brian Kelly, solid answer. Mark, who is it?
One more clarification. Is it restricted to college coaches or are they in the NFL right now?
Look, you're pushing it. You're pushing it right now. Just they're going to hire a coach. I don't care where they coach. All right.
All right. It's going to be, since there's no rules, Harbaugh.
Brian Kelly and Jim Harbaugh. Okay, so I'll tell you who I would have gone with. I would have gone with Dan Lanning. I can't stand the guy. That being said, Brian Kelly is a very solid choice. One, I'm afraid for our video people. I'm afraid for their ability to stay healthy, and he's just with that purple face thing he does when he starts screaming on the sideline. I mean, yeah, I'm with you. It would be hard to ever like him.
Could you imagine having to be a fan of the recruit dancing videos too, like to defend those?
Already made your case, Eric. Don't keep going.
No, it's a solid case. Here's the thing. I know a lot of USC fans are right there with you with Jim Harbaugh, Mark, and they're not going to like what I have to say. I don't hate Jim Harbaugh. He coaches the game the way it's supposed to be played. And I know you have the whole, what's your deal thing. You have but when I look at that, this is a coach that has an opportunity to send a message that his program is ascendant and yours is going downhill. And I think Pete Carroll may have done a similar thing. Pete Carroll is the guy who ran the fake punt against Notre Dame, so he could beat him by 31 again. Let's not forget that. So I actually like Eric's answer more, although I suspect plenty of USC fans are going to give me grief over that because they also hate Jim Harbaugh. Go ahead, Mark. I'll give you the last word. I won't take away a point.
You know what? What if we put Dan Lanning's cigar in Jim Harbaugh's mouth? Can I have the point now?
Oh, I bet Dan Lanning's cigar has been in Jim Harbaugh's mouth. All right, let's go next. I don't even know what that means. Okay. Question number 5. All right, Mark, you're starting us off.
Oh boy.
This is kind of a boring question in light of all these the others, but give me the running back depth chart by the end of the season. Who do you got, 1 through 4?
Yeah, I'm going Woody, Joyner, AP, Brian Jackson.
Okay, so no real change.
Yeah.
McKinney, you agree or disagree?
I agree. Now all of a sudden I'm trying to look and see what we can come up with or whatever, if I can change it. I think that's the answer. What I would love, I think Woody Marks and Quentin Joyner have kind of separated themselves. It's been interesting to hear Lincoln Riley talk about how good Quentin Joyner's been, and then he got 1 carry, kind of seemed nicked up and that sort of thing at the spring game. And I wonder if that's, hey, don't worry if these other younger guys do a little bit more than you in the spring game. We know what we have there. I think those 4 end up in that order. What I would love is toward the end of the year, and I'm looking at Nebraska coming in the Coliseum, I would love a game where Amarian Peterson and Brian Jackson split like 45 to 50 carries. Save the first 2 guys for your push toward the end and just run it all over Nebraska. Because I think those 2, I think Peterson and Jackson, I said it to you, Mark, right when we were in the press box. There's so much talk about, oh, the Big Ten is going to bring this running style to USC, and is USC ready for it? USC's taken those guys into the Big Ten. They've got some of that size. So I really like those 2 young guys. I think the order is what it's going to be by the end of the year, though.
And our guys can catch the ball out of the backfield. All of them showed that on Saturday.
Impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think you're both right. It was a bad question. We're going to throw it out. So it's still 3-1. Although I'll say this, I'm with you on just physically beating down one of these Big Ten opponents. I mean, for all of the offensive fireworks that USC had during the Pete Carroll years, that game against Arizona State where they came out and ran the ball about 35 times in the second half for about 380 yards and just beat them to death like they were beating a baby seal with a club. That was really special. So I'm with you. I would like to see USC get back to a point where they can do that consistently. And for all those people saying, well, that can't happen with Lincoln Riley, it can, because I saw it at Oklahoma. Oklahoma had some games where they were, that Samaj Perrine and other guys are just running 10, 15, 20 yards a carry and just beating people up. So I'd love to get back to that. All right, it's still 3-1 McKinney. It's time for you to make a move, Culkin, if you're going to make a move. But this one's right up your alley. Best outfits, Liberace or Elton John? McKinney, go.
I'm going to go with Liberace, and a big chunk of it is that he was first, right? And so when you're first, I think you get more credit for that. But I think maybe even maybe even head to head. The capes are phenomenal. Capes are phenomenal. I would love all the USC players maybe to come out of the tunnel in some personalized capes, some NIL stuff there. I don't know if there's like a big cape or something that USC can get involved with.
I don't know, and we probably can't get Liberace to run out of the tunnel, but maybe Elton John with the big sunglasses he's got. I don't know. What do you
Could
think,
do
Mark?
that.
Are
Yeah,
you going?
some visors.
Yeah, you want Liberace or Elton John here?
I'm still trying to figure out why this is right up my alley, first of all.
You know.
Uh,
Go ahead.
I don't, but okay. So it's funny that Eric said Liberace with capes. I literally, in my description, was like, Liberace was Jack LaLanne wearing a cape. It was that outfit. So that's why I'm picking Elton John, because he was able to take that and just more pizzazz, put on those high platform shoes, the big sunglasses. Elton John knew how to make it work.
Well, Liberace's the trailblazer, but I do think Elton John was. I think he had more versatility. I think. I actually don't know that. I haven't looked to see what kind of outfits Liberace wore. But the game is going to get out of hand if Mark doesn't get a point. So it's now 3-2. All right, here we go.
I'm going to give Eric the point on him being a knowing more about this.
You want to give him the point?
He seems to know more about it.
Okay, the point goes to Eric McKinney. It's now 4-1 McKinney. Good game playing, Mark. Okay, so Culkin, it's your turn if you're still trying. It doesn't sound like you are. Question number 7, Bill Murray, Steve Martin, or Chevy Chase?
I'm going to go Bill Murray. And I actually had Chevy Chase first, and then I had to go for the tiebreaker. Bill Murray and Chevy Chase, great movies. You had Caddyshack, they were in it together. Chevy Chase, as far as I'm concerned, Fletch is one of the funniest comedy movies ever made. But then you had Chevy Chase. He was the first SNL Weekend Update guy. He left. Bill Murray replaced him. When Chevy Chase came back to host the show, those guys came to fisticuffs. And from what I understand, Bill Murray kicked his ass. So that's why I'm picking Bill Murray for
Really, even with the size disadvantage?
Yeah, I heard Bill Murray won that one.
Okay, well, that's an interesting answer. I didn't expect that level of information. Eric McKinney, who do you got?
Yeah, Bill Murray. Bill Murray's the pick too. I was told. I mean, I was told that there would be no math. Is one of the great quotes of all time from Chevy Chase. But I think overall, movies especially. Although Christmas Vacation, are you serious, Clark? Like Chevy Chase has some of the most quotable lines out there. I'm still gonna go with Bill Murray out of those three.
I'm a little bit surprised that Steve Martin gets no love in this one. I mean, Steve Martin,
a serious actor.
Well,
no, The Jerk is phenomenal. I mean, that's got lines up there too. Absolutely. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels is great. Three Amigos, he's great.
Yeah.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, though, there was moments in that movie where you're like, man, don't make me cry. This is a funny movie. I don't want to feel bad for John Candy.
And Steve Martin then transitioned into like Father of the Bride, which is a funny movie, but heartfelt, and he's a straight man in the movie, and I mean straight man in terms of comedy, not. So I don't know. I'm surprised that he got no love, but all three of them are amazing. Bill Murray had maybe two of the best cameos that you're ever going to find in films anywhere. His cameo in Zombieland, which wasn't too long ago, was amazing. Little Shop of Horrors, where he goes to the dentist just to get his just because he likes the feeling of getting his mouth messed up with dental instruments. I mean, it's good stuff. But it sounds like, because Eric agreed, I'm going to give the point to Mark, unless Mark wants to give. You want to give that one to Eric too, or do you want to keep that one? Okay, 4-2. Good choice. All right, question number 8. Level of satisfaction with USC's portal recruiting since the window opened on a scale of 1 to 10. Eric, go.
All right, this one's got some nuance to it. And the huge caveat is it's not done. There's still a ton of names that can go in all the way up until April 30th, May 1st. So you say a number now and so much can happen in the next few days where it can change. I appreciate you have not written anything down. I'm going to continue. It's like a 2 right now. It's like a 2. You knew you needed big guys on both sides of the ball. There have been some big guys coming in. Again, if USC looks at those guys and say, that's not really for us, and it feels like right now they haven't really gone all in and said, we need that guy, we need that guy. They've kicked the tires on a few, they've looked around. Had they brought guys in for visits, gone all out, sort of push for them, and then they've gone somewhere else, we're like in negative numbers, right? But it doesn't feel like that's happened. There's still time to bring guys in, but the idea of you could have some guys lined up right now, some guys in and feel good about this, that hasn't happened yet. Again, Greedy is a good pick. You'd flip him for help on the defensive line or some elite offensive talent, either offensive linemen or receivers.
Mark?
Yeah, we're standing at 1 right now. I'm just going to go back and use what Lincoln Riley said. They should have 100 guys lined up wanting to play at USC, and they don't. And there's the window's open for another 7-8 days, and I'm sure there's going to be more guys in there. But for every guy that USC's lining up a video conference call for, they're not coming. And it's great that we replaced Traquan Fagans, but I think they probably could have filled that spot from somebody on the roster already. Right now, we're at a 1. They need help inside on the defensive line. They probably lessened their need for the offensive tackle a little bit based on what they showed us in the spring game. But yeah, they're not filling their needs, not right now.
No. Okay. You're both right. The point goes to Mark because Eric, for reasons that I still don't understand, spent the first 10 minutes of his answer telling us that he's not going to try to predict the future, when obviously I'm not asking you guys. Do you think I think so highly of your answers I would expect you to predict the future? Guys, we're
Typically,
trying to. No, I don't. I can assure you I don't. Yeah, look, I suspect that USC's coaches have some idea that there will be players entering the transfer portal that we haven't heard about yet, because while coaches aren't supposed to tamper, and I'm not suggesting USC's coaches do, there are certainly agents that talk and players that talk. And so there may be other targets out there, but it is disappointing that we're this far into the transfer portal. Clearly USC needs some bodies in the middle up front, and they really need an experienced tackle and on the offensive side, and you don't have it yet. So yeah, 1 or 2, both of them are acceptable answers, and we'll just see what happens. But I do think it's likely that they have some idea of other guys jump into the portal and are ready to make their move. But we'll see. Okay, question number 9. It's 4-3, by the way. McKinney, you're hanging on to the lead, which, as I look at it, you'd actually be behind right now had Mark just not given away a point, strangely. Question number 9, and I think that Mark is starting us here. What can USC do to improve the spring game experience for fans before next year?
Well, you can't make it any cheaper. I mean, it was free to get in, so I don't know, maybe start promoting it sooner. Maybe bring back some of what they did when Pete Carroll had the spring game, when he was the head coach. Allow the fans to meet the players after the game. NIL is a big thing right now, right? Set up the tables, let the players make some money, pay for the autographs. People will show up to do that. Again, I don't know what else you can do. It was free. Show up. If you're not out of state like Chris, and you're living in the LA surrounding area, you should have been there. I had somebody actually say, well, the book fair was going on campus. Book fair started before, book fair was going on after the game. Spent an hour and a half inside the Coliseum.
Were they going to the book fair that entire time? Or
I literally saw people making the excuse, well, there's just so much to do in LA on a Saturday. It was a holiday, 420.
There is plenty to do in LA on a Saturday, but that's one of the things there is to do. All right, McKinney, what are your suggestions? I'm sure USC is listening to this program and taking notes. So what can they do?
Yeah, the defensive backs are going to pass along everything we say. So 2 things. 1, win the national championship this year, or get deep in the playoffs. That will help bring fans. I think We talked about Mike Williams being back at USC. Matt Leinart is around all the time. Lendo White's there. Like an alumni flag football, or even just like not full contact 11 on 11, but get those former players out on the field playing. Carson Palmer throwing passes to Marquise Lee, what stuff like that. I think that would be a fun experience. And you do that before or after or whatever. I don't know if you guys saw the Ole Miss spring game that Lane Kiffin put on this year. It was basically like the NBA All-Star weekend. They had like a dunk contest and tug of war, all that sort of stuff without playing a game. I think you still need the spring game, but I'd love to see guys like that. I mean, kind of any era, bring them back, line them up, and I run 4th and 9, just run 4th and 9 against an imaginary defense. Do stuff like that. I think we've talked a lot about connecting to that history, and you have access to those guys and they want to come back. That'd be a fun thing to see in the spring game.
Yeah, I like
That's a
that.
pretty good answer, isn't it, Mark?
It is. I was actually
Yeah.
saying, Eric, you should also have added, they should have just an Oklahoma drill contest.
There you
And I
go.
can see the people in the stands would just jump all over that.
I'd like to, first of all, I love the idea of the flag football game. I think that's fantastic. I'm surprised nobody said they could tackle at the spring game. That might have.
Well, they would tackle, right? Like they've tackled before. Had they never tackled in any spring game, that's absolutely what I would say. This one felt like a one-off. If they do it again next year, then you're right. You got to tackle.
The other thing I'd like to see is a Pat Hayden Lynn Swan knife fight at midfield. That would be incredible. And I'll root for both guys to win. Okay, so let's go with number 10, and it's 5-3. Fortunately, question number 10 is a 2-point question. Who's leading us off? You know what, Culkin, you're behind. You need to go first. If you get a great answer, then you can tie this thing up. Who would you take? Pete Carroll with Clay Helton's 2021 coaching staff, or Clay Helton with Pete Carroll's 2004 coaching staff?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the former and take Pete with Clay's 21 staff, because you always want the best guy at the top, right? And you hope that he can just take the lemons and make lemonade. Pete Carroll, Clay Helton's assistant staff, that's what you want leading your team, if you have to choose a lesser of two.
All right, Eric?
Oh, Chris, you were going to love this answer. The answer is it depends. Am I just playing this one season, or is this going forward and now this is my program going forward, right?
I understand what you're going with.
Because if it's just this one season, I want Pete Carroll's 2004 staff with Clay Helton. If it's the program going forward, I want Pete Carroll at the top for what Mark said, because he's going to be able to kind of train my coaches and do all of that. But again, if I need to win games right now, I want Norm Chow calling plays. I want that 2004 staff involved with as many players as possible.
So my problem with your answer, there is some logic to that, McKinney. This business about if you're going to have Carroll long term, or you whatever happens that first year, then Pete will fire those coaches and bring in other coaches, and you're off to the races. I get that, but it's a wishy-washy answer, because instead of just answering the question, you gave me that well, it depends stuff, which irritated me. And second,
I have Clay Helton back at USC. I know that. Look, I knew that was going to get me in trouble.
If it's Pete Carroll and his coaching staff is made out of Girl Scouts, I'm still taking Pete Carroll rather than bringing Clay Helton back. Although I would love to see how Norm Chow would respond to Clay Helton messing around with his offense, and I'm sure that would be well regarded.
They would put him in his office and change the locks, right? And then they would go out and play the game with him there. I mean, there's solutions.
When did Ed O leave for Ole Miss? Was it after 2004? Or was it after 2003?
He was still there in 4.
Okay, yeah, Clay Helton doesn't.
Tim Davis, offensive line coach, Ed Orgeron, Norm Chow, Ken
Clay
Norton
does
Jr.
not
is there.
survive the season with Edo on the coaching staff. Okay, but you lost those 2 points, and it ends with a 5-5 tie, which is very disappointing. If anybody has 10 seconds why they should win the game, go ahead and give it to me.
I handicapped Eric a point. I gave him a chance.
You did. You gave him a point. I don't know if that cuts in his favor or yours.
Yeah, that's a point for me again, right?
No,
Like
it was-
I
the
didn't.
game's
I want all the
already over.
points.
Eric, I tried to play USC defense. I spotted you a point, and you still weren't able to take advantage.
It's because I play to win, Chris. I come up every week and play to win.
You know what? McKinney gets that point because while you're right, Mark, while you're right that he didn't earn the win, he didn't earn it. He backed into it. The truth is, I want guys here who want to win, guys who are committed to this program, and you were not. You just gave away a point. All right, that's it. Thank you for watching this week. Hopefully we'll have some more transfer portal news next week, but I can't promise that. I thought McKinney was going to read into the future what was going to happen in the portal, and he wasn't able to. Anything you want to say before we shut it off, guys?
I just appreciate that Mark Crane kicked himself in the face to end this one.
We're gonna talk after the show's over.
Oh, I'm not. I'm hanging up on you guys. All right. I'll see you next week. Until next week, everybody. Bye now. Wait. No. I talked to Greg Katz before we came on the air, and I promised him that I would give his analysis.
This would be awesome for the one person who's still here watching. This is Greg. Greg is watching you read his own answers to himself now.
Even Katz stopped watching the program, but I blew it. Look, he wasn't that excited anyway. I'll be honest. I'll give you his summary. He thought it was kind of boring. He wasn't happy once he thought they were doing just the thud business. Thought the defense played relatively well, but he's not excited about the talent up front. He thinks this may be the 4th or 5th best team in the Big Ten. So if you guys have been missing the always positive Greg Katz feedback, there you have it. Hopefully somebody stayed around to watch it. Greg, hopefully you at least saw it. Anyway, sorry about that. Now it is time to go.
When they thudded on that first play, I expected the press box phone to ring with Greg calling.
Yeah.
To say what is happening.
That's exactly right. All right. This time we're really gone. Bye, everybody. See you next week.